These may be the most irresistible cookies I've made yet. Soft, golden, packed with crispy bacon bits, and that perfect sweet-salty balance in every bite. If you love comfort food with a carnivore twist, you're certainly going to want to see this one. For the cookie dough, we'll be using 3 large egg yolks, 10 tablespoons of finely ground pork panko, a 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt, and the sea salt we'll only add if the pork panko is unsalted, 3 tablespoons of softened unsalted butter, 1/2 cup of cooked crispy bacon chopped into small bits, 4 tablespoons of unflavored collagen, 1½ teaspoons of gelatin powder, 2 tablespoons of egg white protein powder or regular egg white powder, 3 tablespoons of room temperature mascarpone cheese or cream cheese. And as a flex carnivore option, you can add 2 tablespoons of raw honey for that sweet salty balance, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. We're going to start by cooking the bacon. Make sure the skillet is nicely preheated before laying down the bacon so it begins to crisp right away. Here I'm using a ceramic-coated pan from Caraway. When cooking, it's important to consider the equipment you use in addition to the quality of food you're working with. Good cookware can give you a more even heat, better control, and a more reliable result. Many people also prefer ceramic-coated cookware because it does not rely on the PTFE non-stick coating used in classic Teflon-style pans. That can make it more appealing as an option for those looking to reduce exposure concerns from worn or overheated nonstick surfaces. It's still important to use any cookware properly and avoid overheating. For this recipe, we want the bacon crisp and well rendered so it adds texture without excess grease. Once it's ready, transfer it to a plate and let it cool before chopping. That cooling step helps the pieces stay crisp when folded into the dough. Small details like this can make a big difference in the final cookie. It's always a great idea to save the bacon grease for later use. Carefully transfer the warm grease to a glass or metal container for storage once it has cooled slightly. I personally avoid using plastic in the kitchen whenever possible to help reduce unnecessary chemical contact and microplastic exposure. Bacon fat can be a flavorful cooking fat to have on hand for future recipes. This 2-piece bacon grease container comes with a built-in strainer on top to help remove any browned bits or impurities, leaving you with a clean cooking fat. It's a simple way to store the bacon grease neatly and have it ready for future use. Now we'll move on to making the dough. In a bowl, beat the softened butter and the mascarpone or cream cheese until smooth and creamy. Mascarpone gives a richer, silkier texture with a more delicate flavor, while cream cheese adds a slightly tangier note and a firmer body to the dough. Both work well here, so it really comes down to the flavor and texture you prefer. Make sure whichever you use, it's at room temperature so it blends easily and creates a smooth base. Now we'll separate the egg yolks, which brings richness, color, and a soft texture to the cookies. If possible, I always recommend choosing pastured eggs over conventional eggs. Pastured hens typically have access to outdoors and a more natural environment, which many people prefer from both a farming and a nutrition perspective. Their yolks are often deeper in color and can be a richer flavor as well. Higher quality ingredients may seem like a small detail, but they can make a noticeable difference in both the final recipe and the food you're regularly eating. Be sure to check out the full recipe card at carnivorecollections.com or use the link in the description below. Here we have the pork panko, collagen powder, egg white powder, and gelatin with 1 tablespoon of water for blooming. We also have the chopped bacon bits for the dough, plus about 2 extra tablespoons reserved for the topping. The bacon should be fully cooled before chopping, that way it'll stay crisp and fold into the dough more cleanly. Sprinkle the gelatin powder over the cold water and set that aside to bloom for 2 to 3 minutes while we mix the dry ingredients together and start working on the batter. Pork panko is a great ingredient in recipes like this because it adds body and structure without using flour or grains. It also helps absorb some moisture and fat, which can help improve the texture and reduce the spreading during baking. When finely ground, it blends into the dough well and supports a more substantial cookie-like result. If you don't have pork panko, you can simply crush pork rinds into a fine crumb and use them instead. As mentioned earlier, if they're unsalted, you'll want to add a pinch of salt yourself. A finer texture will blend more easily into the dough and give a better final result. You can pulse them in a food processor or crush them well by hand. This makes the pork panko easy to create at home whenever needed. We'll now add the dry ingredients into the wet mixture. Mix a little at a time until a thick dough begins to form. This gradual approach helps everything incorporate more evenly and prevents clumping. You're looking for a dough that is thick, sticky, and able to hold its shape. If needed, scrape down the sides of the bowl as you go. At this point, we'll add in the bloom gelatin and mix thoroughly until fully incorporated. Gelatin can be a helpful ingredient in recipes like this because it supports structure and improves the overall texture. It also adds a pleasant chew and helps the cookies hold together as they bake and cool. Once mixed in, the dough should look thicker and more cohesive. Now it's time to fold in the chopped bacon bits, reserving the 2 tablespoons we set aside for the topping. Then let the dough rest for 5 to 7 minutes so that the dry ingredients have time to fully hydrate. Let me know in the comments if you consider making these. Would you go with a honey version or would you keep them fully savory? And here we have the dough after resting for about 7 minutes. The dry ingredients have hydrated nicely, and you can see the texture has thickened into a rich, more workable dough. For baking, I'm using a ceramic-coated cookie sheet lined with a piece of parchment cut to size. The parchment is unbleached and chlorine-free. To portion out the dough evenly, I'll be using a 2-tablespoon cookie scoop. It's one of the easiest and quickest ways to keep each cookie consistent in size. When I first started creating carnivore desserts, cookies felt almost impossible. So many early batches either spread too much, turned dry, or just didn't have that real cookie feel. But that's part of the recipe development, and each round teaches you something. Little by little, you learn what works, what needs adjusting, and what's something you can build on and worth sharing. If you've ever had a recipe that flopped, don't be discouraged. Sometimes the version that finally works comes right after the one that didn't. Head over to carnivorecollections.com for the full recipe card. We'll now top each cookie with a few crispy bacon bits. This adds extra flavor, a great visual finish, and lets everyone know exactly what makes these cookies unique. Those little pieces on top also crisp up beautifully as they bake. And we'll gently flatten the tops, pressing the bacon bits slightly into each cookie. From here, chill the entire tray in the refrigerator for 20 minutes until firm and cold, while the oven preheats to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Once fully chilled, bake the cookies for 10 to 12 minutes until the edges are lightly golden and the center still looks soft. Do you prefer your cookies soft and chewy or crisp around the edges? Once removed from the oven, let the cookies cool on the tray for 10 minutes before transferring them. They will continue to firm up and set as they cool. And here they are, our Carnivore Bacon Chip Cookies, fresh from the oven and ready to serve. You can see the golden edges, soft centers, and those crispy bacon pieces right on top. This is the kind of recipe that feels fun, different, and surprisingly satisfying. Whether you enjoy them warm or later once they fully set, they're a great way to bring something creative to the carnivore kitchen. Now let's take a closer look. you can see that the top has that beautiful golden finish, while the bottom baked up nicely with great color and structure. As we break it open, the inside stays soft, tender, and chewy with plenty of richness throughout. Those bacon pieces add a little burst of flavor in every bite, and the texture is exactly what we were hoping for. If you enjoyed this recipe, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you tried bacon in a cookie. Thanks so much for being here and spending time with me today. For more creative carnivore recipes made with real ingredients, I'll see you in the next video.